Did you know whistleblowing has historical roots dating back to ancient Rome? The Roman Republic actually encouraged citizens to report misconduct or crimes committed by public officials. Citizens were then rewarded with a portion of the fines imposed on the guilty party, providing an incentive for citizens to report wrongdoing. Did you know one of America's founding fathers, Benjamin Franklin, acted as a whistleblower in 1773? Benjamin Franklin was serving as a colonial representative in London. Franklin obtained letters written by British officials who supported restricting the rights and freedoms of the American colonies, even including to advocate for the abridgment of colonial self-governance. Franklin sent the letters from London back to the Massachusetts Assembly. This led to public outrage against the British authorities and contributed to the mounting tensions that ultimately resulted in the American Revolution. Did you know the first whistleblower protection law was passed by the Continental Congress on July 30, 1778, years before the freedom of speech had been crystallized in the First Amendment in the Bill of Rights? Did you know whistleblowing is a form of freedom of speech? Okay, grab a pen and something to write on. I want to ask you a question and I want you to write it down. What do you think when you hear the word whistleblower? What do you think when you hear the word whistleblower? Do you think truth teller or traitor? Exerciser of the First Amendment or snake in the grass? Do you think alarm sounder or snitch? What about revealer or rat? Do you think patriot or Judas? What about free speech advocate or enemy of the state? Well, my name is Tara Rodas, and I'm a whistleblower. I'm hoping you're thinking more on the left side of that column, but we'll see. My aim is to convey the importance of whistleblowing in a free society, and I hope to help you see its significance to free speech and protecting the public interest. As a whistleblower, I totally understand the challenges and the importance of coming forward to expose misconduct to protect the public interest. It's critical. And by the end of our time together, I plan to show you that critical role that whistleblowers have played in protecting the public interest since ancient times. And I hope you will see whistleblowing is exercising that fundamental right to free speech. I also hope to highlight the urgent need to stop censorship and to protect our right to free speech. So, my journey of blowing the whistle began in 2021. You may know in 2021, the Biden-Harris administration gave an urgent call to all federal employees to assist with the humanitarian crisis on the southern border. I volunteered to help. I volunteered to help HHS, Office of Refugee Resettlement, place children with sponsors in the United States. I believed the HHS UC program, as we called it, for unaccompanied children, I believed the UC program was a family reunification program. I was really eager to help. As a Spanish speaker and a trainer, I really thought I could help the children. When I got on a plane in Washington, D.C. in May and headed to Dallas, Texas for training, I can assure you, I had no idea the joys and the sorrows that were ahead. Looking back, I'm glad I had no idea what was about to happen. After training in Dallas, I was deployed to the Pomona Fairplex Emergency Intake Site in Pomona, California. That's me, in the third row, in the blue jacket, inside the yellow circle. Interestingly, if you look on the front row, you might be able to identify HHS Secretary Becerra, Congresswoman Norma Torres, and Hilda Solis, who is the former Secretary of Labor under President Obama. They're on the front row. Pretty interesting when I look at it now. But in June, I discovered that children were going to suspicious sponsors. Some sponsors were sponsoring multiple children from multiple sites. I discovered some apartment buildings had more than 40 children living in them. Then I learned an area in Houston, Texas had more than 300 children released in a 2-mile radius. This made no sense. Now, I was trying to make sense of it, and I thought it would be really great if somebody could help shed some light on it. But someone sent me the Senate report from 2016. It actually detailed how child traffickers all the way back in 2014 had lured children to the United States to work in slave labor conditions. I was stunned. If you can imagine, it gets even worse. At the end of August, a Department of Homeland Security whistleblower came forward with evidence, hard evidence, that members of transnational criminal organizations, like those involved in sex trafficking, were sponsoring the children. It was like the floor fell out from under me. I was truly at a crossroads. I went to Pomona to help the children, and I felt like I was on the wrong side. I decided that at all costs, I had to get this information into the hands of people who could save the children. That meant blowing the whistle. Well, as you may imagine, if you read the news, blowing the whistle has some serious consequences. I was swiftly retaliated against. I was falsely accused of wrongdoing. I was threatened with investigation. I was escorted off the emergency intake site by HHS staff and security. My badge was taken. It wasn't a good day, but I don't regret it in the least. It was the right thing to do to protect the children. Using my free speech, I blew the whistle. I'm hoping it leads to children being rescued, criminals being prosecuted, and the UC program being abolished or reformed. I don't say that lightly. Abolished or reformed. Stay tuned. What is a whistleblower? Well, I like this simple definition. A whistleblower is an insider who uses freedom of speech to sound the alarm against fraud, waste, abuse, and malfeasance that betrays the public trust and is against public interest. That's pretty simple. Whistleblowing at its core is about protecting the public interest and ensuring that the truth is brought to light. A key component of this process is exercising that fundamental right to free speech. Whistleblowing and free speech are intrinsically linked. In a democratic society, the freedom to express opinions, share information without fear of censorship or reprisal is critical. Whistleblowers often take great risks to share information they believe is in the public interest, and in doing so, they exercise their right to free speech to expose wrongdoing, corruption, or abuse of power. Whistleblowers actually play a vital role in maintaining the health of a society. They help to hold powerful individuals and institutions accountable, promote transparency, and deter future wrongdoing. In a functioning society like our great republic, we rely on whistleblowers to alert us to issues that may otherwise remain hidden, which in turn allows all citizens, just like you and me, to make informed decisions about our lives, our families, and participate in the democratic process effectively. Again, whistleblowing and free speech are forever linked. The First Amendment is a cornerstone of American democracy and has been interpreted by the courts to provide broad protection for free speech, even in cases where the speech may be offensive, unpopular, critical of the government, or other sources in authority. The right to free speech is one of the most fundamental freedoms we have. But as you know, in today's world, free speech is under attack like never before. There are more and more attempts to silence voices and suppress ideas. The inclusion of free speech in the Bill of Rights reflects the belief of the framers of the Constitution that an open and robust public debate is essential for the functioning of a democratic society. It reflects a commitment to individual liberty, and it recognizes the importance of protecting dissenting opinions and differing viewpoints. Today, the First Amendment remains a critical safeguard against government censorship, and it's a powerful tool for individuals and groups seeking to express their ideas, their opinions, and beliefs, no matter how popular or unpopular they may be. We discussed it at the beginning, but most people don't know that on July 30, 1778, the first whistleblower law was passed unanimously by the Founding Fathers. July 30, 1778. Now, this law came about as a direct response to the action of 10 sailors and Marines who reported abuses committed by their commanding officer, Commodore Essex Hopkins. He was the first commander-in-chief of the Continental Navy. The whistleblowers accused him of torturing British prisoners of war, mismanaging operations, and engaging in other acts of misconduct. These 10 individuals, led by Samuel Shaw and Richard Marvin, reported these abuses to the Continental Congress. Recognizing the importance of addressing these concerns, the Continental Congress took action and suspended Hopkins from his command. In retaliation, Hopkins filed a criminal libel suit against Shaw and Marvin. As a result, the Founding Fathers saw immediately the need to protect individuals who report wrongdoing from retaliation. They unanimously passed the first whistleblower protection law on July 30, 1778. The law stated that it is the duty of all persons in the service of the United States, as well as all other the inhabitants thereof, to give the earliest information to Congress or other proper authority of any misconduct, frauds, or misdemeanors committed by any officers or persons in the service of these states which may come to their knowledge. This historic legislation laid the foundation for modern-day whistleblower protections in the United States, recognizing the importance of holding individuals in positions of power accountable for their actions and encouraging others to come forward with information about misconduct or wrongdoing. This legislation marked a significant and early commitment by the Founding Fathers to transparency and the protection of free speech. We're going to fast forward to 1971 to Daniel Ellsberg and the Pentagon Papers. In 1971, Ellsberg, a former military analyst, leaked the Pentagon Papers, a top-secret study revealing that the U.S. government had misled the public about the Vietnam War. His actions sparked a national debate and actually contributed to ending the war. Moving on to 2013 to Edward Snowden and the NSA surveillance revelations. In 2013, Edward Snowden, a former National Security Agency contractor, disclosed classified documents that revealed the real extent of the U.S. government's mass surveillance programs. This exposure led to widespread discussions about privacy rights, government transparency, and the balance between security and civil liberties. There are far too many brave men and women to mention. I've personally had the privilege to meet and collaborate with some of these amazing people. Whistleblowers like Jody O'Malley of HHS, Zach Voorhees of Google, Carrie Porch from CNN, April Moss of CBS, David Johnson of Hasbro, Eric Cochran of Pinterest, Trevor Adams of ESPN Disney, Ivory Hecker of Fox News, Jason Piccolo of DHS, and so many more. Every one of them gave up their careers. They put it all on the line to do the right thing for the public interest, for you, for me, and for all of us. These whistleblowers are unsung heroes. Sadly, we have to speed up to 2022. Last year, Matt Taibbi and fellow reporters Michael Schellenberger and Barry Weiss were granted access to Twitter's internal communications by CEO Elon Musk. The Twitter Files investigation revealed that Twitter collaborated with the US government to turn the internet into an instrument of censorship and social control, all the while under the guise of an anti-disinformation push. This is shocking because people who didn't follow the narrative were canceled, deplatformed, and censored. Maybe some of them were you. Clearly, this type of interference with free speech is unacceptable. Just so I can show you the power of what one person can do, lastly, I'd like to briefly mention two whistleblowers who I have immense respect for and have had the honor and privilege to work with, learn from, and they've helped me to get my story out to people who've been able to make a difference. First, Kyle Seraphin, who's a suspended FBI agent and veteran of the United States Air Force. He reported malfeasance at the Federal Bureau of Investigations. As I'm sure you can imagine, the FBI didn't like that too much, and actually they still don't. But Kyle has a wife and two small children. He had to sell his house to pay bills. The FBI has stripped him of his security clearance, and since having a security clearance isn't a right, he can't even appeal to get his job back, as he has to have a clearance to do his type of work. He's done all kinds of secret squirrel things to include track down and arrest members of transnational criminal organizations. He was keeping our nation safe. Now he's canceled. Fortunately, he's making lemonade out of lemons, and he's now the host of the Kyle Seraphin Show. You may have seen him on some major news outlets talking about the interesting things the FBI is doing to target normal citizens like you and me instead of hunting down criminals. I encourage you to watch the Kyle Seraphin Show. And last, but definitely not least, is Department of Homeland Security whistleblower Aaron Stevenson. For 18 years, Aaron served our country with honor. He spent 8 years in the U.S. Marines and 10 years as a federal employee. He worked as an analyst at DHS, and he identified the first ever case of a member of a transnational criminal organization attempting to sponsor an unaccompanied child. His story aired on Project Veritas while I was sitting at the Pomona Fairplex emergency intake site. His disclosure, his telling the truth, led me finding that a member of a transnational criminal organization was attempting to simultaneously sponsor two children, one from the Pomona Fairplex in California and one from the emergency intake site in Texas. Aaron's disclosure led me to find a member of a transnational criminal organization attempting to simultaneously sponsor two children, one from the Pomona Fairplex in California and one from the Fort Bliss emergency intake site in Texas. The screen you're looking at is one of the pieces of information he tried to pass forward to save the children. Aaron's decision to be brave and do something led me to be brave and do something. I think it's important to note that when I was reporting all of these instances of suspicious sponsors, I was handing it up through the chain of command. And then I continued to hand things through the chain of command. I did make protected disclosures while I was still on the site just before they walked me off, and I'm very grateful that I did. But I followed all the normal channels. I waited for children to be rescued, criminals to be prosecuted, and the UC program to be abolished or reformed. And I kept waiting. After months went by, and me telling the story to everyone on the inside that I could, I had to get the word out. I couldn't sit on it any longer. Again, Aaron's decision to be brave and do something led me to be brave and do something. I went to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas. As you may know, they are guerrilla journalists. They spent 9 months investigating my claims and went to the addresses I gave them They knocked on doors, boots on the ground, and they talked with the children. What they learned was horrifying. This 16-year-old child, she's being pimped out by her sponsor. The sponsor claims to be the child's aunt, but the child says she doesn't know her. A 15-year-old girl had to quit school to pay her debt to the cartel. The list goes on and on. I encourage you to watch the exposés when you have a few minutes. They're shockers. They're true, and they're shockers. I'm really hoping that children will be rescued, criminals will be prosecuted, and the UC program will be abolished or reformed. But until that time, I'm going to keep using my freedom of speech to get the word out there. I know that one whistleblower can make a difference because I saw when Aaron came forward as a whistleblower and made his disclosures, I was able to see something on a completely different side of the same program. Him coming forward allowed me to see something important that led me to come forward. And that's how it goes. One gets one gets one. One voice makes a difference and gives other people the courage to stand up. As I wrap up, I'd like to give a special thanks to Sarah Westall and United for Free Speech for putting this conference on. I'm grateful for all the whistleblowers who've gone before us and all those who are going to be coming. And I'm really grateful that you're here to hear this information. Let us not forget that whistleblowing and free speech are two pillars upon which our democracy stands. They are essential for ensuring that the truth is not silenced and that the power remains in the hands of the people. In the words of George Orwell, in a time of universal deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. We should all do that. Now more than ever, we have to come together to stand against censorship and to protect and uphold our fundamental right to free speech. By doing so, we can ensure that future generations inherit a world where transparency, accountability, and the public interest continue to thrive. As members of a free society, we each have a responsibility to take action. We must speak out against censorship and any attempts to suppress free speech, whether it's on social media platforms, in the workplace, or even in our daily lives. Together, let's embrace our collective power to create a world where the voices of truth are heard and the principles of free speech are fiercely protected. One voice can make a difference. Your voice can make a difference. Let's stand together and fight for free speech.